Sports Talk with Player Agent 3. My next guest is a former professional basketball player, former NBA certified player agent, former coach, but most importantly, this is family. Mr. Dwon Clifton. How's it going?
It's going great, man. Thanks for having me, man.
No doubt, man. How you and the family holding up during this COVID-19 quarantine?
Man, probably about the same as everybody. Ups and downs, trying to adjust to one big curveball that I think, hit everybody unexpectedly. But all in all, we're all in good health and good spirits, and we're doing the things that we can do to stay safe. So, man, not too many complaints.
Right. Now, basketball, man. Basketball has been your life, man. It's pretty much been your entire life. But what a lot of people don't know is, and I've known you since knee high to a duck, but a lot of people probably don't know, man, that growing up, man, you were a baseball guy. Talk about growing up, man, in what role sports played in your life.
Well, to be honest, with sports in general, starting off, I think baseball, it was something that pulled me in early on because of the social aspect. Baseball is a slower paced game. And it's funny, just how big those social elements are when you really think about them. In hindsight, they make more sense, and you see the impact that those things had on your experience when you look back on them. Because when I think about my early years as a participant in sports, and I think specifically about T-ball and baseball, the thing that I remember the most, man, is Tasty Freeze, going to get ice cream after the games, chewing all the bubble gum that we could probably stand to chew, and probably the reason why all of us had early cavities in the dugout, waiting for your turn to bat and being able to sit there and talk with your buddies. It was just, it allowed for that. It was such a slow-paced game that it allowed for you to have a lot of time to just kind of twiddle your thumbs, man, and play with your fellow peers. So at that point in my life, it was like the perfect fit for me, because it gave me a sense of belonging when I needed it the most. And, it just kind of helped balance out my family dynamic, and it was just, like I said, it was a great compliment. So my early experiences in that regard, it really piqued my interest, which allowed my love of sports to grow. So
now you Lewisburg, North Carolina is where you're originally from, but you left Lewisburg during your early childhood and moved to Greensboro to attend Westchester High School. What was behind that decision, and was that a basketball thing for you?
It was not so much basketball. It was more, again, an overall need that myself, my family, in particular my mom, saw that would help me, just kind of getting out, expanding myself, broadening my horizons, and being able to see the world in a different light outside of, again, growing up in a very small town of Lewisburg, just seeing things in a way that was, you can't help but see things through a certain funnel when it's so small. And I needed things socially that I couldn't necessarily get there any longer. And I think it was just a blessing in a disguise to have basketball work as kind of a catalyst for that. Because I don't think I would have even had an opportunity to explore those experiences, or those options wouldn't have been there had it not been for, sports, if I'm being honest. But even though that was the kind of the catalyst that got things started, what came out of it was so much bigger, you know, but that's what kind of allowed me to look at things the way that I did, and influenced a lot of those decisions. So, you know, going out, leaving Lewisburg and going to Greensboro at such a young age was just another thing that helped me grow as a person. And it was, like I said, it was bigger than sports.
So you get to Westchester, and you became one of the top high school basketball players in the country while you were there. Did you think about baseball anymore, or you knew that this was going to be my ticket?
No, yeah. It honestly, had we had a baseball team, I probably would have thought about playing. But being at a smaller private school, the only sports that we had at the time were soccer and basketball. Those were the two main men's sports. So baseball wasn't really an option. And the way that I departed baseball wasn't the greatest, because my last at bat that I remember was, you know, when I was playing for an all-star team, and I got my nose broken by a curveball that didn't curve. So it shattered my nose pretty bad, and just the pain and the time that it took me to recover from that, accompanied with the fact that I started to grow a little bit, and the people that I was around, it became a little bit more socially acceptable to be good at basketball. So like things shifted, and it was kind of like the perfect storm. So when I left baseball, I kind of left it behind because, you know, my love of basketball grew that much more. But again, to say the least, I would have definitely probably entertained playing if we had that option at the school.
Mm-hmm. Now, again, you were one of the top high school basketball players, as I remember, when you were at Westchester. Talk about your recruiting process, man, and how you dealt with that whole situation.
It was unexpected because, again, I didn't grow until late. It wasn't until about ninth grade, if you probably can remember. You know, I wasn't a pipsqueak, but, you know, I wasn't the tallest kid for a while. I think it helped me develop a sense of a kind of like a little man complex in a way, because I was always around guys like yourself and my older brother and guys that were older than me and naturally bigger than me because of that. But even as a kid for my age, and I wasn't the biggest, so I was always kind of finding myself in a position of trying to prove myself and prove that I was worthy of being out there with people. So when the whole idea of being recruited even came to mind, because again, growing up in Lewisburg, you just didn't hear much about people being recruited at a high level. So my experience of that situation was very limited. So I remember being in ninth grade and finally planning my first exposure event and doing well enough that I got, you know, my first letters from schools like Pfeiffer and smaller schools. That was when I said to myself, hey, I may be able to play at the next level in some way, shape, or form. But again, even at that time, it wasn't about, you know, ACC. It wasn't about going to a high level. I just wanted to try to get, you know, good enough to get a scholarship, because I was told at the beginning of my high school career that my mom wasn't going to be able to afford to, you know, take a loan out to get me to school academically. And that, you know, that wasn't an option for me. So at that point, it was kind of like, this is my way, and let me try to use this as a platform to get there. So the whole recruiting situation was kind of like just a complete, just I was oblivious to it all. So trial and error and trying to figure things out as they came. And then as my game grew and as I physically grew, my recruitment grew. So.
And then you go through that recruitment process, man, and you ended up signing at Clemson University, which is in the ACC. And we all, North Carolina kids growing up, man. If you're a basketball guy, you want to play in the ACC. Once you stepped foot on campus, man, did you feel like it was a dream come true to be playing not only Division I basketball, but playing in the year in and year out the premier conference in America?
Yeah, because it was larger than life. Like you said, for kids to grow up in North Carolina, especially playing in the ACC, was bigger than NBA basketball, because we got a chance to see much more of the competition at the collegiate level, especially in the ACC back then, because of, those were the games that were on. And those guys that were playing in those games were our NBA superstars. And I remember being young, and I had a cousin, Mickey Hennett, who played for NC State. You probably remember Mickey.
Yep.
And, I remember Mickey coming to the Franklin Court Projects, where I spent a lot of my time as a kid, coming to the Franklin Court Projects with Chris Corciani and Rodney Monroe. And man, you would have thought I saw God himself, And again, it's funny how you never forget certain things and the imagery that associated with it. And I'll never forget. I vividly remember that moment. I'll remember that for the rest of my life, because, to see people that you only saw on television in the flesh, it was life-changing. And to be able to reach out and touch them and talk to them and see that they're actually not as weird looking in person as they are on TV. It just changed my whole way of thinking about a college athlete, and it got me to believing that I could be one. So, but again, like being on the first day I was on campus at Clemson, as an official student athlete, it was surreal, because even though I wasn't at NC State, I was at a ACC member school getting ready to, embark on a career that if you would have told me, 10 years prior to that moment that I would be in that moment, I would have told you you're crazy. So, yeah, man, I had a lot of moments where I would just kind of stop and try to breathe in the moment, because it just didn't feel real. But I was grateful and thankful to be there.
So take me back, Dwon, to the first time you're in Raleigh playing NC State, the first time you in Durham playing Duke, the first time you in Chapel Hill playing Carolina. I mean, your family and friends are here. I mean, Cameron is historic. The Dean Dome is historic. Playing in Raleigh is historic, man. I mean, what was it like for you, man, the first time you stepped on the court at those arenas?
Well, my freshman year, the first time that I stepped on the court as a starter was versus Duke. And it was on the road at Cameron Indoor Stadium. And again, the moment was bigger than me. And it took everything in me to kind of try to get myself in a space where I just kind of relax and play basketball, because there was a lot of stuff going on, like a lot of new stuff. I was coming off the bench up until that point. And, once conference play started, I earned the right to be in the starting lineup. And it just so happened to be, my first game being at Duke. It was just like kind of storybook, because again, there's no bigger program in the ACC than Duke and Carolina. And so to be on the floor at Cameron Indoor Stadium as a freshman, sitting at half court waiting for the ball to be tipped, I was, as you can imagine, nerve-wracked, trying to calm myself down mentally, doing all the, just coaching myself and telling myself to calm down, and just noticed that my legs kept shaking and I couldn't get them to stop. So at that point, I had never had any type of anxiety attacks or anything like that. And I had played in some big moments. You know, when you go through high school and you're in the All-American space, you played in some big moments, you know? So it wasn't my first, so I couldn't understand why I couldn't find the calm enough to just get my legs to stop shaking. But I couldn't. And next thing I know, I kind of look around and I realized that my legs are shaking, not because I'm nervous, but because the Cameron Crazies were jumping up and down and they were causing the floor to shake. Mm-hmm. So I remember practicing and getting ready for that moment during the week, and coach had us practicing against the scout team with 6 or 7 players on defense. And he would turn the heat up in the arena. And I always, as a young guy, I was like, why is he doing all this? Like, why is he giving them so much? Like, I mean, we played games up until this point. This is not our first game, you know, and I know it's Duke, but dang, you know, the scout team's got 7 people. That's not realistic, you know. And when we started the game, it was extremely hot, and the intensity in which they played was like, you couldn't compare it to anything that we experienced up until that point. And it literally felt like they had 7 players on the ball.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And then I got it. So yeah, that safe to say, you know, I had my moments. I had my moments where I made some plays and did some things, but they crushed us. And it was a learning experience, but more importantly, I was just honored to be in the moment, man.
Right. Going back to moments, man, did you have a welcome to the ACC moment? And I've had several ACC guys on the show, man, and I don't know if somebody dunked on you or somebody swatted your shot in the stands, but did you have that one moment where you was like, okay, I'm here?
Oh yeah. I mean, my freshman year was the year that Julius Peppers played for Carolina, and Julius Peppers is probably the biggest human being to this day I've ever seen in a basketball jersey. It looked like the jersey was hanging from the rafters because his shoulders were that broad. So when he got on the court, I remember saying to myself, why is this dude even out here? And the ACC was extremely physical, especially back then. You know, even back then, things were a little bit different than now. So when you went across the lane, you know, body checking and things like that happened. And I remember one possession where I was running across from one side of the court to the other, and I was chasing Joe Forte, chasing him. And they were running him off a stagger screen. And I didn't know that's what they were doing because the play was designed to kind of misdirect you. So when he peeled back, I run smack dab into Julius. And when I hit him, it felt like I hit a stone wall. Like, I didn't feel his, like, you know how you hit someone, you feel like them give into that impact of you running into them. Because I was running full speed. Mm-hmm. And there was no give in his body. It was almost like he was just granite. And when I hit him, I just fell to the floor. Probably had a concussion. But, you know, back then you weren't getting taken out of the game. It wasn't the concussion protocol wasn't around. So when I hit him, it like knocked the wind out of me. And it was just like, dang, these are grown men. Like, this is a whole other level of athlete that I'm out here with. And I'm no longer, you know, in high school, being 6'5" and being athletic and being able to jump, I was either the first or the most or the second most athletic person in most games that I played. But for a guy of that stature to be able to jump, Julius could jump almost 40 inches off the ground. And he was 6'7", 260, 270, muscle. So, you know, that was one of those moments where I was like, look, you know, I'm in the ACC now. These guys are elite. Like, everybody's elite.
Right. So you do 2 years at Clemson, and then you transfer to UNC Greensboro, which is not the ACC. It's a lower mid-major Division I school. What was behind that decision to leave Clemson?
Well, it was a lot more going on in my life at that point. I had experienced a heart disease scare that added a wrinkle to my sophomore year at Clemson that I didn't expect. And anytime you go through a situation like that where you go from feeling like you've arrived and you're getting ready to take that next step in your career, and then you're told that not only your career, but your life as you know it could be in jeopardy, you do a lot of soul searching at that point. I was told that I had to sit, indefinitely at the beginning, because again, if I had the disease they thought I had, then basketball would have been over for me. And so sitting on the bench and being on bed rest for 2 months, trying to figure out what was going on with me, it gave me a lot of time to reflect on what mattered the most to my life, not just basketball. And I kind of lost that desire to always want to be on TV, and it stopped. It no longer mattered as much where I played ball. I just wanted to be back close to my family, because those are the people that really kind of held me down when I was going through, those moments of I don't know if I'm going to wake up from this sleep I'm about to take, because that's the type of space that the doctors had me in, because they were saying, look, if this is what you have, this is a possibility. So, there was a lot of nights where I was afraid to go to sleep because I didn't know if I was going to wake up. So, with that being said, as you can imagine, that changes you. And once I got through that storm and the season was over, I had to do so much after being on bed rest for 2 months just to get my body back into game shape. And knowing what I know now, I probably would have redshirted that year, but I didn't have the resources and the experiences that I do now. So I allowed them to kind of really rush me back. And I rushed back and did what I could do, because I was always an energy guy. So once I got my conditioning back in order, I was able to jump back out there and be disruptive defensively and things like that. But by the end of the season, it had taken a toll on me, and I just no longer wanted to be in South Carolina away from home. So I picked the school that I could go to, really by default, that was the closest to my family, that wouldn't cause me to have to lose a year of eligibility, and I left. So that kind of took NC State or Wake Forest off of the table, because at that point in time, if you transferred to a school in the same conference, then you lost a year, and that wasn't really any recourse to get that year back.
So you go to UNCG and you finish at UNCG, and you got an opportunity to play professionally overseas. Talk about that experience, being able to play basketball after college.
It was great, man. Again, it was, as a kid, you set these goals, these dreams of being a pro. It wasn't the pro career that I dreamed of, but it was the feeling that I dreamed of. All the same, because obviously every kid grows up playing ball in the United States would look like their ultimate goal is to make it to the NBA. And that wasn't in the cards for me for a lot of reasons that, were out of my control, and a lot of reasons that were in my control. It just didn't happen. But when I got my first opportunity to go and play over in Europe, when I put on that jersey and I realized that I signed a contract and they were going to pay me to do something that I love to do. Granted, it wasn't nowhere close to the money that you would think you were going to see in the NBA, but it was money, and it was an opportunity to provide for myself and my wife at the time, and of us being so young. And it wasn't the most ideal situation, but it was nonetheless, you got a chance to play in front of a lot of fans on TV, and people treated you like a professional. And I enjoyed it. It was short-lived because I made the decision to make it short-lived. And a lot of that stemmed from mentally where I going through the things that I had gone through in my life up until that point, and that heart scare was a huge part of it. You know, I made a decision at that point that family was like having a family, creating a family and building a legacy was bigger to me than sports. And sports was going to be something that I might utilize to kind of help along the way. But that moment in time back in Clemson, my sophomore year, I made peace with that. And, you know, going over to Europe and having a chance to play against other European professionals, the thing that happened with myself and my wife, we were expecting to have a child, and our first child was a miscarriage. But at that point, you know, I took inventory of my life even more. I'm like, look, is this the right environment to start a family in? And I got married when I was young. I was in college, my last semester of my senior year. And that was my commitment. And I knew that I wanted to, you know, start a family and have kids and be there for them in ways that I never had. And, you know, that outweighed my decision to continue to play. So after playing for 2 teams over there, it was to me an easy decision to make.
Okay. Now, I want to switch gears for a second, man. You and your brother, Dwon Clifton, who I had on the show earlier this year, in my opinion, you guys formed one of the biggest AAU movements in North Carolina with the D1 sports program. What was the vision that you guys had when you were thinking about forming D1 sports?
It ultimately ended up, I think it was more my brother. It was not, I know. It was more his vision at the time. Okay. To approach the game of basketball from that aspect, from that angle, that was his vision. It kind of morphed into my purpose as I became more of a part of it. Because he had started doing a lot of that when I was still playing. I was on the court. I was still actively seeking my career, and I kind of took the role as a mentor to a lot of the kids that he had early on. And I just remember the gratitude, the reward that I got from being able to walk into a room and have kids, you know, look up to me in a way that actually mattered. And being able to take all of these experiences that we've talked about even in this interview that I've gone through from different angles, and kind of having a front row seat to watch these other teenagers going through their own journeys and being able to provide a certain level of insight that was organic, real, and they could feel it coming from me. And at that point, I got a chance to see that I had an ability to just be sincere and get people to connect with that. And again, that doesn't happen if if it wasn't for my brother's vision to start D1 Sports. Even though, you know, he'll tell you that it was inspired by me. It's funny how those things work. He tells you that it was inspired. His vision was inspired by me, but that inspiration and what inspired him ended up becoming my purpose to be a part of in a deeper way. And it's what I continue to do now to this day.
And you guys produce guys like Quincy Miller, John Wall, Deuce Bello. When you see Ryan, I mean, just a host of other guys that you got that have come from your program. When you see what these guys have done, in college and on a professional level, what does that do for you as well? I mean, you could say your brother as well, but what does that do for you guys when you see the success that these guys have had?
It makes you feel like you're doing something in life, that matters. Because, speaking personally for me, from my angle, I just believe that we all are seeds in this world. When God places us here, what grows from that seed being planted on this earth is up to us, but also up to the environment around us. And when you have a kid in your presence, whether you like to acknowledge it or not, you become a part of their soil. And they're only as good as you are fertile, nurturing, and experience. And the things that you've gone through is going to make that soil that much more fertile. But your desire to share those things is where it all connects. And I have gone through the good, bad, and ugly of this business. But the one thing that you can't really take away from the situation is the thing that's so pure is that there were moments that you don't even have to speak of with young men that have gone on and achieved a lot of great things in their lives that no one could ever take away. And you go to bed at night knowing that they don't get to where they are without the role that you played in some way, shape, or form. And it takes a village. So it wasn't just you, you were a part of that village. And, it's that to me is the thing about all of this stuff. When you turn on the TV and you see, a guy like a Ryan Kelly or John or Quincy, these guys get drafted and they go on and they do great things in their careers, or they just even have a career and they end up in a better situation than they could have probably ended up in had you not been there in some way. That's the part about it that, that's the gift that keeps on giving, and anything that they touch and anything that they do, you'll forever be in some type of way connected to their success.
All right. Now you go on to become an NBA certified player agent. John Wall gets drafted number 1 overall pick, and you were in that camp with John Wall. Do you think that was a natural progression for you to becoming a basketball agent? Was that something that you were thinking about?
No, it actually wasn't. But like you said, it was kind of a natural thing. So it kind of just presented itself to me because I didn't set out to be that. I set out to honestly be a coach and be around the game. And, it was just that natural connection that you build when you have a strong relationship with the person that led us to that conversation. Because trust is such a big thing as you go up in rank in your career. Things get a lot more, a lot crazier. People, you can't really see where they're coming from as well because there's so many different angles people could approach you from. When a young man like John or any of these guys go through that moment, the one thing that they want to hold on to is some level of sanity and stability in their lives. And it just so happened that I was a part of that. I represented a part of that for him. And the opportunity to be in that role as a member of his representative team, when it was propositioned to me, it wasn't something that I really, set out to do, but it felt like a natural thing to move on to at that particular time for the right reasons. I felt like, hey, I don't have a lot of the opportunities that I have now if it wasn't for my association with, some of these elite high school players. No one's paying attention to my coaching style. My ability to connect with these guys in the summertime is what the right schools were noticing. And they could tell, look, these guys are responding to you. And even though you're a younger coach, they're responding to you. There must be something that you're doing right. Mm-hmm. Because, if you've ever coached and and you've coached long enough, you know the biggest part of coaching is managing personalities and managing, you know, expectations and keeping your team believing in what you're telling them. And that's not easy to do. But to be able to build those relationships and get those guys to respond to me all summer, that was an opportunity for me to showcase myself. And they did that for me. So when that moment presented itself and I felt like I could, in some type of way, be there for them, and John in particular, I just felt like that was the right thing to do. So I did it.
Now you probably won't agree with this, but it's the truth. You and your brother Brian, you guys became larger than life, and particularly being associated with John Wall and being the John Wall being the number one draft pick. You guys were getting things done. I mean, you guys were really big in the business side of basketball, but then here come the critics. You know, there were a lot of things said about you guys in the media. How did you feel when you started hearing some of the negative press?
It honestly, because I'm an athlete, you know, and I've gone through the critiques of people talking about you after a bad game, people that don't know you. It didn't really affect me as much as I think it did my brother, but I kind of took it with a grain of salt because like I said, I've gone through having a good game and being praised about it, and then doing something bad in the game and being talked about. And it wasn't really so much about who I was as a person. It was just that people felt like when you are out in front in the public eye in a way that your platform is bigger than the average person, and people can see you at the draft and they can see you on TV and they can see you in connection with the kid on a scale that's bigger than where they are having a chance to you know, really see from the comfort of their own home. They feel like you're the one that they can tear down and critique and do those things. So, you know, it did hurt. I mean, I'm human, so it hurt that people who didn't really know me, and even some of the people who did know me, who felt it was advantageous to kind of say things contrary to what I think they knew the truth to be, because that's just what makes people feel better about certain things like that. Like human nature, it's just human nature. People don't want to necessarily give credit where credit's due unless they can participate in that credit as well. Mm-hmm. And the things that we were doing, our hearts were in the right place. There was a vision that was there, but we were also doing it in a way that it had never really been done that way before.
Right.
And with the scale of an athlete as John, it had never been done that way. The way that the type of moves we were trying to make were not the status quo moves. And anytime anyone tries to do something like that, no matter who they are, where they come from, you're gonna get a lot of backlash, because you know that type of disruption is not, people get uncomfortable with that. And I can say that and see that, you know, a lot more clear now, looking back on it. So I know exactly where all the dissension and division came from with that situation, because you know there's a lot of people out there praying that you don't make it,
right.
Because for whatever reasons they don't want to see that happen.
Okay, I got a couple more things I want to get to with you, and I'm gonna let you get out of here. On a more serious note, man, you know, based on the climate right now in the world, a lot of things that are going on, especially with the George Floyd situation. But when you're talking about professional sports, and you see the lack of African American head coaches, general managers, owners, agents, when I say basketball, I'm referring to basketball agents. I'm referring to the lack of high profile clients that sign with African American agents. What do we have to do, man, to turn the tide?
Well, to me, it's simple. Like, you wouldn't take your computer and have a systemic issue, a virus in your computer, and go into your computer and delete apps and upload new apps to the computer, because, you know, anybody that knows just the basics about, you know, technology and software and computers, how it works, you go and upload a new app onto a computer that has a virus, then that app's going to be contaminated pretty soon, you know, almost instantly. Anything that touches a corrupt system is going to be compromised. And it's nice to see that the conversation has come to the forefront a lot more recently. I think in part because of the tools that we all have with social media. With social media, it's allowing our voices to spread, and it's allowing even guys like yourself to have your own platform and grow it organically. Whereas, you know, shoot, in the 90s, you would have had to get to one of these news stations just to get some level of exposure for what you're trying to do. And that, accompanied with the things that have, you know, been happening in recently, and you know, being caught on camera, I think it's like the ugly truth being plastered right into our faces, and we can no longer ignore it. Which sparks the conversations about the systemic issues with racism that we have and we've always had. And getting people, the right people, to get comfortable being uncomfortable with that, having that conversation. It's what I think I'm starting to see a lot more through my own personal experiences. I've had conversations with some of my white colleagues that I don't think I would have had these things not taken place over the last few weeks and couple months. And so, you know, my biggest thing is now you're starting to see those conversations bleed over into other parts of the system. And I think people are starting to realize that this really is a system issue. This systemic racism is the thing. It's not that people are wanting to be liked by others. We just want the respect of the opportunities to be about merit and not so much about the aesthetics of who we are as people, based on things that we can't control, which is our skin tone. Mm-hmm. And you know, that saying that, you gotta be careful how you say it, because in the process of speaking about something that can be so hurtful that someone like myself and you, we all go through day to day, it's hard for people to connect with that when they don't have to go through that. So if you go at it too aggressively, and sometimes it can make people feel like, oh, well, like you hate me, right? And the conversation about the disproportionate amount of, you know, coaches that are in college basketball or college sports, period, that don't look like you and I, it's just clear. Like, it's not about an opinion. It's just look at the numbers. And then when you look at the numbers, ask yourself, why does it look like that? And that's the conversation that we need to have, and be honest, and not try to sugarcoat or, you know, cover it up with reasonings that really aren't real, justify things when they want to justify them. Mm-hmm. But now I think that when you look at these things and you really start to get to the ugly truth of the origin of all the problems that we have, it seems like it's time for us to start to break down the system and build it back up. Right. And that to me is what it's going to take. It's going to take a full-fledged breaking down of the system, not just when it comes to policing, not just when it comes to banking, because those are just apps. The system The foundational part of the system we got to get down to the core of it, break it down, and start building it back up with the right type of people in positions to affect change in a good way. And that's gonna require people to give up things that, honestly, in my opinion, if I'm a white person, you're gonna have to give up things that put yourself in a position where you may be compromising something that you benefited from, even if you benefited from it unknowingly. So to become conscious and be selfless enough to make that sacrifice, that's not going to be easy.
All right. Let me ask you this real quick. Do you like the idea of athletes from high school going to HBCUs, and particularly the high-profile athletes coming out of high school? Do you like that idea of those guys going to HBCUs?
I mean, I love it, because why not? You know, when you've been involved in the business of sports like I have, and been around, you know, in meetings with marketing companies who are sitting down talking about, you know, their bottom line and what moves the needle. When you've been involved in those types of conversations, it's easy to see how it wouldn't hurt them. It would actually help move the needle and change the scope of things in a way. Because, you know, talent is what people turn on their TV to watch. And people are going to watch based on wherever that talent goes. And the more and more you see these kids doing things like building their own brand from the time they're even middle schoolers, and the followings that they're going into college with, when you see someone like Zion causing the NBA to try to figure out a way to, when they do go back and resume play, we can't not let Zion be on the court. We got to do something, even if it means stretching the rules, because, again, it's about viewership.
Right.
And people want to watch things that make them say, wow, that was amazing. And it ain't about being black, white, green, and yellow. It's about, do you have the talent to warrant that type of attention? And if you do, you should understand your power in a good way, not in a way that you're trying to exploit these schools, but understand that someone's created a platform that you can go and be an asset to, and don't allow the platform to dictate to you completely as to where you have to go in order to be successful. Because these kids are now starting to see, man, I got millions of people that view my videos when they pop up on Facebook or on YouTube. And so wherever I go, people are going to follow.
Yeah. Yep. Last thing, man, tell people what you're up to these days.
Well, now I'm simply put, my day job is I'm the athletic director at a Quaker school in Greensboro, North Carolina, called New Garden Friends School. It's a great school, great innovative school that really is supportive of a lot of these issues that we are speaking of. It's a school where I feel like I can have a voice. I'm trying to build a program, not a basketball program, but an athletic program that embodies the right things that sports truly should represent. And I have a chance to do that and kind of start from scratch and build that here. But then I also, again, like I said, I discovered a part of my purpose when I was with D1 Sports, and I'm running a youth program that is something that I wanted to start that's called Swap Sports. Is Sports with a Purpose is the acronym. And again, it's just that, getting young men and women to connect with the purpose of what they're doing and why they're doing it, and how they can use sports as a tool to strengthen themselves as people, and even get and propel themselves as people in life, and create opportunities that they may not have been able to create without it. But more importantly, just complete themselves from a standpoint of their leadership abilities, their abilities to connect with others. A lot of these issues that we're having with racism and things like that, giving them a chance to see the world through a wider lens and not such a narrow frame. That's what sports can do when you use it to do that. And it's only as good as the coaches and the people around these kids that are pouring into them. So that's what I have going on right now, man. It's just all about sports and staying connected with the youth at the grade school level, because that's where I feel like my purpose is served the best.
All right, man, that's good stuff, man. Dwon, I got 1,000,001 more questions to ask you, man. So whenever this COVID-19 is up, man, I can sit down with you face to face, man. I want to try to get some more work in with you, but I really appreciate your time for coming on the show, man. And I wish you nothing but the best in the future, man. And, you know, the next time you come to Raleigh, give me a holler.
No, I will do, bro. Again, I want to thank you for the opportunity. Thanks for, giving a platform for people to have a voice. I'm kind of quietly watching you grow and do this, and like nothing but love and respect for you, man, for, doing this and shoot, man. I just know that it's coming from a place of purpose for you as well. So anytime, to be able to watch someone that you've been closely connected to at some point in your life doing something positive as you are, and then being able to, benefit from it as I am being able to speak right now, man. I can't thank you enough, man, and just want to tell you to stay encouraged, to keep moving, man, and keep building your platform, keep growing. So glad to be a part of it, Miguel. Appreciate you, bro.
All right, man. Thank you, man. Thank you.
All right.
Dwon Clifton.